Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. North Korea fired a ballistic missile across northern Japan Friday, just days after the UN Security Council approved a new round of sanctions against the North Korean regime. The intermediate-range missile triggered air raid sirens across the island of Hokkaido, drawing condemnation from Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who called it totally unacceptable. In response to the test, South Korea conducted a missile drill of its own, releasing a video showing the launch of missiles capable of reaching any part of North Korea. This is South Korean President Moon Jae-in.
North Korea should clearly realize that it is entering a path of downfall due to a diplomatic and economic isolation, as much as it increases frequency and strength of reckless provocation.
At the United Nations, the Security Council is set to hold an emergency meeting in North Korea this afternoon. In a statement, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson called on China and Russia to take direct action, including new sanctions on oil exports and North Korean labor. Last month, President Trump threatened to unleash fire and fury on North Korea, and the U.S. has not ruled out a nuclear first strike. In London, at least 22 people were left injured, some with serious burns, after a homemade bomb exploded Friday aboard a train at a London Underground subway station. Video shared on social media showed flames pouring from what appears to be a white bucket inside a bag. Most of those injured suffered flash burns. Others were hurt when the blast triggered a stampede. The British government says it's investigating the explosion as a terrorist incident. In Iraq, suicide attackers fanned out across the southern city of Nasiriyah Thursday, killing at least 84 people and wounding nearly 100 others. The attack was claimed by ISIS and largely targeted Shia Muslims from Iran on a pilgrimage to holy sites in Najaf and Karbala. This is Faraz Ahmed, an eyewitness to some of the attacks.
There were 4 buses of Iranian pilgrims. The gunmen boarded the buses and sprayed those who were inside with bullets, while others in pickup trucks drove by, firing on the people. They walked into the restaurant, opening fire on the people inside, the young, the old, sparing no one. All the people who were here were killed.
In another attack, men in stolen army vehicles wearing military uniforms used a suicide car bomb to target a checkpoint. The violence comes after U.S.-backed Kurdish and Iraqi forces have seized much of ISIS's territory in Iraq, and after an Iraqi intelligence report found more than 40,000 civilians died in the U.S.-led battle to retake Mosul from ISIS. President Trump sent mixed messages Thursday over whether he's reached a deal with Democratic leaders on legislation that would provide a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children. On Wednesday, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer said they'd agreed to a deal with the president that would protect some 800,000 dreamers after Trump ordered the cancellation of the DACA immigration program. But on Thursday, Trump cast doubt over the agreement, first tweeting no deal was made last night on DACA, before later telling reporters he was largely in agreement with Pelosi and Schumer.
Well, we want to get massive border security, and I think that both Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, I think they agree with it. But so we met last night with, as you know, Schumer, Pelosi, and a whole group, and I think we're fairly close, but we have to get massive border security. Is there anything? Oh, I think he's on board. Yeah, Mitch is on board. Paul Ryan's on board.
But House Speaker Paul Ryan said Thursday there was no deal struck with Trump and accused Democrats of negotiating through the media. Meanwhile, Breitbart News, the far right-wing website, had a headline encouraging people to burn MAGA hats. That's Make America Great Again hats. In Arizona, the Phoenix New-Times reports employees of the Motel 6 chain shared the names of hotel guests with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, leading to the arrests of at least 20 people. The New-Times reports at least a third of the arrests came after ICE agents knocked on motel room doors without a search warrant and asked for permission to enter. A Motel 6 spokesperson said the program was implemented at the local level without the knowledge of senior management and promised the company would order managers at more than 1,400 locations not to share guest lists with immigration authorities. The widow of an Indian man who was murdered by a racist gunman at a Kansas bar last February has been denied a visa. Sunyana Dumala's husband was working in the U.S. under the H-1B visa program, and after his murder, Dumala's residency was terminated. Dumala is enlisting the help of Congressman Kevin Yoder, who says immigration law should be changed to protect the spouses of hate crime victims. In New York City, plainclothes ICE agents arrested 4 undocumented immigrants at a Brooklyn criminal court building Thursday morning in an unusual move targeting a courthouse for immigration enforcement. An ICE spokesperson later confirmed the arrest, saying the 4 men were suspected of gang activity. ICE policy prevents officers from making arrests at sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and places of worship without approval from supervisors. Courthouses are not included on the list, but the practice is unusual and has been criticized by prosecutors, police, and defense attorneys. This is Catherine Poore of the Legal Aid Society.
It makes people very scared when they hear things like this happening, because they are told by the court that they have to return for their court dates. That's something that they are ordered to do, and if they don't do it, a warrant can be issued for their arrest. On the other hand, if people hear that there's ICE coming into the courthouse, if there's ICE coming outside of the courthouse, and they have fear for their own immigration situation, that puts people in a very, very difficult position.
New York is a sanctuary city. President Trump Thursday repeated his claim that both sides were to blame for violence at the rally of white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia last month. The attacks injured dozens and left 32-year-old Heather Heyer dead after the 20-year-old Nazi sympathizer James Fields barreled his car into a crowd of anti-fascist protesters. Trump's comments in the wake of the attacks, including a claim there were very fine people among the far-right protesters, drew outrage even from members of the Republican Party. On Thursday, Trump doubled down on his remarks as he spoke to reporters about Wednesday's meeting with the Senate's lone black Republican, South Carolina's Tim Scott, or as the White House mislabeled him in a photo of their meeting, Tom Scott. Trump was speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One.
Great talk yesterday. I think especially in light of the advent of Antifa, if you look at what's going on there, you have some pretty bad dudes on the other side also, and essentially that's what I said. Now, because of what's happened since then with Antifa, you look at, really what's happened since Charlottesville. A lot of people are saying, in fact, a lot of people have actually written, gee, Trump might have a point.
The Trump administration said Thursday it'll continue to exempt Iran from nuclear-related sanctions, ruling the country is complying with its obligations under the Obama-brokered nuclear deal. But critics warn President Trump could move before an October 15th deadline to rule Iran has breached the agreement, which would meet a long-standing White House goal of undermining the Iran nuclear deal. In Mexico, authorities say 2.5 million people are in need of aid as the death toll following last week's devastating 8.1 magnitude earthquake climbed to 98. In the town of Juchitán, Oaxaca alone, more than 5,000 homes were destroyed, leaving residents with spotty electricity and no running water. On Thursday, President Trump drew fire for failing to contact Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto in the wake of the earthquake and another disaster, Hurricane Katia. Earlier this week, Mexico withdrew its offer of assistance to victims of Hurricane Harvey in Texas. In the Caribbean, authorities say they've evacuated all 1,800 residents of Barbuda to its sister island of Antigua after Hurricane Irma's landfall September 6 made Barbuda uninhabitable. Barbuda's government says it's the first time the island has been uninhabited in 300 years. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, Governor Kenneth Mapp says the islands of St. John and St. Thomas are still nearly entirely without power and that Irma destroyed schools and the main hospital on St. Thomas. Officials warn the U.S. territory could be forced to declare bankruptcy under the process that Congress created last year for nearby Puerto Rico. We'll have more on Hurricane Irma and the U.S. Virgin Islands later in the broadcast. in Burma. Amnesty International said Thursday it has evidence the Burmese military directed a massive scorched earth campaign against the minority Muslim Rohingyas, burning villages to the ground and shooting people at random as they tried to flee. Amnesty's report cited fire detection data, satellite imagery, photographs and videos from the ground. At the United Nations, officials said Thursday the number of Rohingya who fled to neighboring Bangladesh has reached 400,000, warning as many as 1 million refugees could flee by year's end. This is Rohingya activist Zawin Mong speaking at a protest outside the United Nations here in New York.
The U.S. government needs to stand up along with the UN. We want to have a tough resolution on this crisis. This crisis is not the regular small communal violence. This is a genocide.
In Washington, D.C., senators are considering a resolution targeting the Burmese leader Aung San Suu Kyi over her government's treatment of the Rohingya. On Thursday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell spoke out in opposition to the resolution.
You publicly condemning Aung San Suu Kyi, the best hope for democratic reform in Burma, is simply not constructive. Unfounded criticism of Suu Kyi exaggerates her ability to command the military, which the Burmese constitution does not actually allow her to do.
The Senate resolution would call on Burma to allow the UN unrestricted access to areas where massacres are occurring, while demanding Burma grant citizenship and freedom of movement to the Rohingya. In Brazil, prosecutors brought fresh corruption charges against President Michel Temer and 6 associates Thursday, accusing them of pocketing nearly $200 million in bribes and covering up their crimes. The charges will force a vote in Brazil's lower house of Congress on whether to put the president on trial at the Supreme Court. Temer survived a similar vote in August, even though a secretly recorded tape captured him approving hush money payoffs for a powerful politician jailed on corruption charges. In Greece, authorities are struggling to contain a mounting ecological disaster after a tanker carrying 2,500 tons of fuel sank off an island near Athens. By Friday, thick tar and a heavy oil sheen covered beaches near the Greek capital, fouling the waters and killing wildlife. Authorities initially claimed they'd sealed off a breach in the sunken ship, but later admitted the vessel is still leaking oil. Harvard University has canceled an offer that would make Army whistleblower Chelsea Manning a visiting fellow after CIA Director Mike Pompeo called Manning an American traitor and canceled a planned appearance on Harvard's campus. In response, Chelsea Manning tweeted, quote, "Honored to be first disinvited trans woman visiting Harvard fellow. They chill marginalized voices under CIA pressure," she tweeted. The Obama administration prosecuted Manning under the Espionage Act after she revealed secrets of the U.S. State Department and Pentagon, including evidence of war crimes and support for U.S. allies committing torture, to WikiLeaks. And in North Carolina, police in Charlotte say they're enlisting the help of the FBI as they investigate the murder of Derricka Banner, a 26-year-old trans woman who was found shot to death in a car Tuesday morning. Police say they're not investigating the death as a hate crime because a state statute omits sexual orientation and gender identity. Banner is at least the 20th transgender person killed in the United States this year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.